The moment you've all been waiting for. Politicians. Our Speaker Pro Tem, Cherie, couldn't be with us. She is at a conference in Atlanta, but she wanted me to pass on her greetings and best wishes. And Senator Carrozza and I actually met earlier this week on a variety of subjects. The Chamber's legislative agenda will be coming out shortly. We did discuss some of that, but she wanted me to convey to all of you her regrets. She's attending her goddaughter's wedding. Goddaughter's wedding. And she wished she could have been here, but she's going to continue to push hard against anti-business legislation coming down the pike in Annapolis. So at this point, I want to bring up the moderator. He's our usual moderator, Greg Reddell with State Farm Insurance. Greg is the co-chair of the Chamber's Government and Business Affairs Committee. That committee worked hard to develop the subject matter for today's questions. He'll go over the format after he introduces the legislators, and I'll say it. He'll remind you of the 3x5 cards on your table. If you have a question for the panel of legislators or an individual legislator, when you write it down, raise your hand with the card, and one of the chamber staff will be around to pick it up. So without further ado, Greg.
Thank you, Bill. It's nice of you to all sit at one table. I don't have to look around. Thank you. You've heard the three biggest lies: the dog ate my homework, the check's in the mail, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. We hope to dispel that joke today. Please welcome the Eastern Shore Legislative Delegation. If you all will just come up and take your seats. Senator Eckerd, Delegate Hartman, Delegate Moutz, Delegate Adams, Delegate Anderton. As Bill indicated, we put together a committee and we try to come up with the questions that you guys would want to ask as the business community in the Salisbury area. And having gone through the morning session, I'm going to throw that out right away and we're going to go to building trades. So let's start out with a question about overregulation and the challenges to building materials, complicating the supply chain issues, which are exacerbating the inflation problem and causing difficulty with construction on the Eastern Shore. So I'm just going to throw this open to any of you who would wish to take that. The question came up, sorry, Carrie, you want the format. Go over the rules. 90 seconds per candidate to respond to the question. Carrie will be our timekeeper. And when we see the red flag, we'll try to get around to the end. Thank you. So that said, regulation, difficulties with building trades, is there anything that can be done in Annapolis in the upcoming session? Is there anything you see on the horizon that will help to deal with these challenges we were discussing in the last hour?
I think Peter Franchot said it probably the second year that Hogan was our governor: just do no harm. Ask the legislature not to hurt the small businesses. What's interesting is we've just gotten through this pandemic, and when I say through the worst of it, and most businesses are trying to get their footing again. We're trying to get in front of banks again. We're trying to grow our businesses again. At the same time, I think the legislature, we're in an election cycle, re-elections are coming up. We want to make a mark vis-a-vis passing bills, and our Eastern Shore delegation should be very interested in holding back this temperament of passing more legislation, family medical leave. Obviously, I've heard that the minimum wage bill might get advanced all the way to $15 an hour very quickly. So all these things hurt businesses. My private business, I'm in the construction trades, so finding labor is difficult. It's very expensive. Material costs are going up, so when I'm contracting work, margin erosion happens. So when I agree to do a certain job at a price and then 3 months later get the material, my costs go up. I can't negotiate that out with the supplier. Those are real issues that we just have to live with. And most importantly, the businesses have to look forward. We have to have a predictable environment moving forward. Government, to the extent that we can hold businesses harmless in this, is to give us an environment for the next 2 or 3 years where we can see the roadmap, see what's going forward, so we can get back to business as usual.
Well, that was a broad introduction, and I would just say you covered a lot of those issues. I think, well, first of all, we need to take one piece of good news I visited Trade Atlantic up at the port, and I know you've heard a lot about supply chain backup, and we've seen some of that, but it's not with our port here in Baltimore. Actually, we've been picking up the extra ships and carriers who've been coming up to be able to expedite getting product out and across the country. So that's the good news, that Maryland has contributed to supply chain, because we know it's been an issue across the country. But I think we have, as you said, a bigger issue with regulation in Annapolis, and I keep thinking, well, there aren't as many of us on our side of the team to be able to hold back a lot of the regulation that gets pushed down. And in my mind, it's a way of micromanaging businesses. And to me, that's what's stifling. It takes a lot of education and information, and we need to hear from you. We need to hear from our small not-for-profit businesses as well as regular small business and large business when it comes to more paid leave, $15 minimum wage. We need your stories and we need your faces at our committee hearings to be able to tell how it impacts you.
Yeah, if I can add, my answers are going to be much shorter today, but I think we have to support things like career and technology. We need more people in the workforce. We have to either incentivize people to get back to work or stop incentivizing them to stay home. I think there are two key factors to it.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is participate. Let's go to the prepared questions. The Kirwan Commission that everybody was following for several years has now embodied itself as the blueprint for Maryland's future in a couple of different House bills, a House bill and its update, created 5 pillars that are priorities: early childhood education, high quality and diverse teachers and leaders, college and career readiness pathways, including career and technical education, more resources to ensure all students are successful, whatever that means, and governance and accountability. So to each of you, and Delegate Motz, why don't we start with you? Tell us what the 2 biggest priorities you think are with that. It's already been, everything's been funded through a certain date, but what do you want to make sure is brought forward?
Going through the list, thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's great to see everybody. The 2 things that caught my eye right off the bat, and we were talking about education for years, but early childhood education is a paramount need, a paramount priority for the success of our students, and clearly that's one for me I'm committed to, and something we've worked on for a number of years. And there's another item that isn't listed that I would have listed it, but that's teacher pay. The teacher pay to keep that profession competitive. That's not on the list, but I think that's critical. Kirwan's controversial. There are a number of things I could talk about with regards to the legislation, but teacher pay and early childhood education are my top 2.
Delegate Anderton, you want to weigh in on that?
Sure. First off, it's been a little while. How y'all doing? Not that well? Let's try one more again. How y'all doing? Hey. So, you know, they listed 5 policy areas: early childhood, attracting high-quality teachers and leaders, college and career readiness, governance and accountability, and then resources to ensure all students are successful. I want to touch on that one. I think they're all equally important, of course. Without either of those, none of this will be successful. But I guess I kind of was a non-traditionally educated person. I don't know, those of you who know me, you know I don't really sit still. You know, I wouldn't call myself disruptive, but I was kind of bored, I guess, in class. And so, you know, teachers really didn't know what to do with me. So I kind of had to learn on my own. You know, and so more dedication, more understanding on students who are like me, I think would open up opportunities for those young adults that I didn't have, that would put them on a path much more of a sharp trajectory upward than what I had. And so, that was a part of Kerwin that I testified on the House floor, and the part that excited me was that we were going to finally be able to pay attention to students who were like me, who really need that extra attention, that extra guidance. And so, I look forward to that being implemented.
Delegate Adams?
Okay, so Dr. Hanlon early and often talked about universal pre-K, and we did as a county move forward with that in a way that I strongly supported and championed. So of the 5 pillars with Kerwin, the top one for me is early childhood education. A child that starts off right with the best foot forward has the best chance of continuing through elementary school and then high school. And so that I view as being very important. And Kerwin did talk about this and made it part of their the priority. I will say that my understanding is that we were supposed to have by February 22nd, that each county has to have their plan in place, and we know that COVID interrupted all of that. And so we think, at least what I've heard, is that we're going to have to push that plan off. But one of the first things that will actually get implemented will be some of the pay issues, so giving teachers higher earnings income, and then also credentialing and all these sort of things. So what you're going to see locally as a priority is that that second pillar of Kerwin actually being implemented. So 1, universal pre-K, which the county already does, and then 2, the component where Kerwin talks about how we recruit and retain great teachers for our Wicomico County, which I think I'm focused very closely on.
Senator Eckert?
Thank you very much. Our women have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. And one of the biggest issues I think we're all going to be facing is adequate child care. So I'm going to go upstream a little bit from pre-K, because I believe it's important that pregnant moms and infants and toddlers up to pre-K also have adequate resources. And I think that's where we need to be putting our energy and our attention. And that actually falls under the jurisdiction of the Department of Education as well. So elements of that have been included in Kerwin, but the governor also added additional funding for infants and toddlers for the first time in a long, long time. And I think part of where we are with workforce right now is because we've missed out in the previous years with adequate funding for child care, adequate resources for child care, and that's where we have the biggest need right now. So how we together as a business community, how we work with education and what's there for Kerwin is going to determine our workforce in 10 to 12 years from now. So please think about pregnant moms, infants and toddlers, pre-K as all part of the economic spectrum. So if we want sound economic development, if we want to build a workforce, we're going to need to be focusing on moms and babies and infants and the provision of how we provide for that without increasing the minimum wage and without increasing more paid leave.
Delegate Hartman?
Thank you. I actually saw the early childhood education as possibly a hindrance to some of our daycare centers, so I saw it as a negative impact to businesses. I'm not an advocate of growing government, but I actually was able to get an amendment to the Kerwin bill to create an ombudsman position to help our daycare centers get accredited as far as being recognized as an early childhood opportunity to educate, so they would actually be able to facilitate for some of those preschool positions. The priorities for me were the quality teachers. That as Delegate Mounts said, we need to increase teacher pay. The amount of responsibility put on these teachers, especially what happened through COVID, when they're trying to teach some in the classroom and have a different curriculum for some at home. My daughter's a teacher. I did not support Kerwin, even though my daughter's a teacher, because I thought we should have implemented this bill in pieces, just like we're prioritizing right now. We should have prioritized the top things in the bill and put it in pieces instead of trying to do all this at once. Secondly, we didn't fix the problem for the teachers of the behavior situation in schools. The principals are are incentivized to lessen the number of principal visits, but yet the teachers are trying to maintain a classroom where there's a learning environment. It's conflicting. The other thing, as I mentioned earlier, the career and technology. I don't even think our local career and technology schools offer plumbing. You know, the basic need, we talk about the construction costs. We just added electric to one of our trade schools, and I applaud Warwick for what they're doing with their new building for career and technology.
That's a really good segue. I wasn't kind of thinking I'd go this direction, but I think that makes a lot of sense because it takes us to the next question, which is, you know, these are business people. These are folks that have to make a payroll, that have to deal with staffing issues, that have to get, when nothing else is going right, have to figure out a way to make it go. I love the comment from the gentleman who was representing the Restaurant Association, because isn't that true with every small business? Every day's your hair's on fire, right? So let's deal with reality. This is all great. I mean, it's nice to talk about what we'd like to do. Every member on this panel is a Republican in a state that is a 2/3 majority Democrat House. So we get to the point where if you're pragmatic, you can't really just say no to everything, right? You guys have pounded your head against that wall for many years. So the question is, what can you do to limit the negative impact on businesses and specifically the Eastern Shore in Annapolis with some of the bills we're seeing, and we'll get into a couple of them later, but just from a general standpoint, how do you mitigate the damage when you really can't do anything if the other side is 100% unified?
There we go.
Johnny?
Okay, you got my appetite, or my whistle wetted. I just did our payroll this morning, and I'm balancing a bunch of books. I run a small business, this question did catch my attention, and it's unique. I think the world has changed. Things are a lot different. And, you know, in the past, my perspective is you need to find a middle ground. You know, you need to find a way to bring people together. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where there really isn't a middle ground. I mean, we're seeing things go into law, take effect, and less than 12 months later, we already have empirical data to show what the negative consequences of those policies are. And I think it's our onus, it's our requirement, our responsibility not to say, let's compromise on this. We need to have the facts and the figures to tell our adversaries in Annapolis why what they're doing is not in the best interest of everyone involved in our communities, particularly on the Eastern Shore. I think everybody wants unity. They want to see a happy ending. But on some of these things that are happening right now, there's got to be a line where there's nothing left to compromise on. We're losing businesses, and we're losing businesses because of the state's policies and the government's policies and COVID. But we've got the data, and so it's critical for us to make these arguments, but we need the information from our businesses, from our business community, so we can advocate for you. And that will be our responsibility, in my view, this upcoming session.
Let's just come down the line. I think everybody wants to weigh in on this.
Sure. Well, there is plenty of debate. I mean, the thing of it is a lot of things happen in committee that people don't even see. If you would see some of the bills we're able to kill in committee, some of the things that come out, I at the end of the year always put out a newsletter this session. I'd love to have a little section in there for the craziness that we dealt with, so you can actually see some of the things. But committee is where it happens, and then on the floor, second reader, we really, the media is there. We do a great job of bringing out the weaknesses in the bill, the impact, and everything else. And oftentimes, that debate leads to negotiation and some compromise before a bill goes to third reader, and so a difference is made. And then also, the public can help out a lot. Remember the bill that was going to tax services? And what happened? I think it was the Maryland Board of Realtors that motivated a huge crowd of people, and a lot of folks were in Annapolis, and you made a difference. That bill never made it out of committee. It would have taxed every service. Just think of a house. all the construction, all the labor, even the survey and lawyer's fees, all that would have been taxed. So a lot of good can come from all of you as well.
It's relationships. I look over, I see Senator Mathias over there, and he told me when I was first elected, go be yourself. You know, people see fake, they see right through it. Be true to who you are and you'll do just fine. Well, I'm the person, I just love everybody. You know, there's not one person in Annapolis, if they were broke down, they know if they only could make one phone call, that if they called Old Cornbread, I'm coming to get them, no matter where they are. And the same for each of you. That's just the way I operate, you know. So in Annapolis, when things are being discussed, and Wayne's right, a lot of the work is done in the committees, not on the House floor. You're able to have those conversations because that's your family member. You're going to talk to a brother or a sister. You're not going to talk to a stranger where you have to introduce yourself and have some sort of staged conversation. You know, ask them how the weather is, you know. I mean, my grandfather always told me if somebody was asking you about the weather, they want money from you or something. So, but the point is just to be yourself. And that's you know, we have a great team up here. Mary Beth's not up here. She's the first one that'll tell you that we all play to our strengths. You know, some of us are studiers, some of us are conversationalists, and together we work very well. And let's not forget that we do have the Speaker Pro Tem here from the Eastern Shore as well. So when all else fails, you know, I can go see her. But the point is, it's relationships. It's friendships. It's much easier to explain what life is like on the Eastern Shore to a friend than to a stranger. And so, you know, I always encourage anybody who's looking to run for public office, you know, lead with your heart, not with your head. You know, you'll do much better that way by setting the example of how to just put all the partisan stuff aside while you're there. And just remember, it's two people. You're doing the same thing. You're just trying to make life better for the people who sent you there. We may have different opinions on how to get it done, but we all want the same thing. And so we work through those differences and opinions together, and we do a lot of good behind the scenes. We really do, and it's all about just relationships and just loving your neighbor as you love yourself.
Does anyone else who's known Delegate Anderton for several years feel like they know his grandfather really well?
Sorry. That's right.
Delegate Adams.
So I serve on Economic Matters Committee along with Johnny Mouts. I'm on the subcommittee for business regulation, unemployment insurance, and banking. So I sit on a very influential committee for the purpose of this group setting. The other important thing about my background that I've used for the past 7 years is I'm a private business owner who fought our state back in 2013 and won. Watching that process happen, I saw very few business owners in Annapolis, which motivated me to run. I will tell you that it's very hard to run a business and hold elected office. However, Johnny and I represent probably a small handful of people that are business owners first who got into politics. It's important to have that message. And then when you have that venue, that opportunity to say these things, you have to do it in a way that's influential. So we don't go up in Annapolis and pound our fist. We don't go up there and lose our minds. We try to influence outcomes. We do that in our committee. I can tell you that if it goes to subcommittee, I am heard, and I try very hard to be authentic, be factual. And if a bill's going to pass, let's modify it, make it workable, create bright line, clear paths to compliance with the law. If it's not going to pass and we can see an opportunity to kill it, you do it in subcommittee. So I've learned in 7 years to do that. My last comment will fall in line with Carl, who talked about Jim. My mentor sitting next to me in some ways that don't fit with a traditional mentor, but just watching how Senator Eckhart operates, you just learn the process and how to negotiate and work and develop relationships. I've been doing that for 7 years. I'm now the minority whip in the House of Delegates, and I think that's part and parcel to my reputation in working bipartisan, but also holding the line as a conservative Republican.
Senator?
Thank you very much. As others have said, first of all, we as a team have to win the right to be heard. And we win the right to be heard by being clear about what we believe is important, being willing to listen to others, and to be able to try to bring together those shared common values. Because I would suggest to you that we have far more shared common values in Annapolis than one might perceive. We also debate viciously, both in committee and on the floor. And I have found, whether it was in the House when I was on Economic Matters or Budget and Tax in the Senate, that my voice is heard. And we do win. I believe we win the debate all the time. We just don't capture the vote because we don't have the votes. And people will come up to us on both sides and say, you know, you guys are really right. And we need to persevere with that. That's why I've probably stayed where I am as long as I am. Because if I didn't think we influenced at some level, I wouldn't continue to be there. But we are heard, our voice is respected. I was on a call today I'm on the recreational marijuana work group that's going to come up with some kind of a opportunity. Whether it gets passed or not, that's another issue. But we will be talking about and debating, and we already are, the important aspects of every aspect of that issue, just like we've done with sports betting and just like we've done when we opened up the casinos and we went from the video lottery terminals into the tables and et cetera. And all of that is very important debate. But once again, we many times win the argument, but we don't get the vote.
I swear I thought I heard you say you were on recreational marijuana.
I didn't say we wanted it. I said you're working on it.
I'm sure your perspective on this is very different and maybe didn't see what I did, but this was, I thought, one of the most funny answers, funny things from this podium I've seen, because as Senator Eckert was talking about debates behind the scenes, former Senator Mathias is over here cracking up. I'm sure there's some, I'd love to hear those stories. I'm going to jump because we want to make a priority of getting your questions to the delegation, and I'll remind you there are white 3x5 cards at your table. If you have a question, please feel free to fill it out and raise it high. Bill will come around and pick it up, and we'll try to get these in as a priority, as I said. And this question is, well, we're finally getting natural gas to Somerset County. Legislation to ban natural gas as an energy option in commercial buildings after 2030 is on the table in Annapolis. Are you kidding? More question marks.
Let me take it off. Yeah. I didn't see that one on the list, but I can roll with it. It's not a new issue. I mean, there is a push, and it's no secret to take all natural gas offline. There's a belief that natural gas is dangerous, is not good, bad for the environment, and so it shouldn't be supported and ought to be excluded wherever possible. That movement is a strong movement. They've got a coalition, the League of Conservation Voters, Climate Action Now. They've got a lot of influence in Annapolis, and it doesn't surprise me to hear that they're pursuing that. Natural gas is an excellent form of low-cost energy that keeps a lot of people warm at night, and it keeps them safe. We've been successful at preventing limitations or reductions in certain areas. I know there was last year with the first COVID relief bill, there was a provision in that bill that took millions of dollars out of a settlement that would have gone for natural gas on the Western Shore. So it's going to be a challenge. It's a real threat, and we'll take it very seriously.
Anyone else want to weigh in on it?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, so Johnny and I, again, serve on Economic Matters Committee, and we deal with energy policy. The problem is sort of a lack of understanding of what it takes to deliver energy into consumers' homes, and many of our elected officials actually don't get it. Our committee actually went to Calvert Cliffs this past summer to tour the nuclear facility. It's the first time I'd ever been there, and many of our members. And so the message from that was we provide baseload, clean energy. And as they added, if you as a state want to move forward with more progressive measures, solar, and I see our friends with offshore wind, these technologies don't exist without having the base load energy that nuclear provides. Natural gas is clean. and it is base load, it is inexpensive, and we have to have it not only for the purpose of growing our diverse energy needs through new technologies, but we need it in order to keep the prices in line as we go forward. So, reliability, being able to flip the switch anytime. Let us not repeat California. Let's not hear about Maryland and brownouts. Let's keep baseload energy in place. Let's grow the economy. Let's do new things, innovative things. But at the end of the day, when we fight to eliminate natural gas, those that support that actually negate every other progressive, clean environment idea because they don't seem reasonable under the scrutiny.
Anyone else? Carl?
So, of course, as far back as I can remember, Somerset County's wanted natural gas, and we finally get it down there. 1 year later, here comes a bill to get rid of it for everybody. Who's surprised? I guarantee you, offline, I could probably name one of the 5 people who sponsored the bill. You remember the previous question? Now you get to see it come into play, because we're going to have to work on this, because even though it may seem a little far-fetched, sometimes if you let the far-fetched bills kind of languish off to the side, they become reality. I see offshore wind here. I support offshore wind, solar, natural gas, coal, oil, anything you can think of to make your electric bill cheaper today than it was yesterday. That's the whole point. It's a quality of life issue. So, now it's time for relationships to come into play. Now it's time for negotiations to come into play to make sure bills like these, a couple years back they had the chicken tax bill. Those bills, you hear it and you're like, that's crazy. But if you don't pay attention to it and eliminate it, it sticks around and becomes reality. So, ready to have some fun?
Okay, let's go down that path. Everyone remember the Democratic debates before the presidential election, and they had all the candidates lined up, and they'd go through issue after issue and ask them to raise their hands. Are you for health care for illegal immigrants? And everybody raised their hand. So here's the question, and I'll ask for a show of hands. As a delegation, can you go to Annapolis and say you would like to see no new regulation on construction, no new fees, or taxes on construction?
Yeah.
Raise them high. Okay, take a picture.
Oh, hold it up.
How will a new chair, and Chris, I'll direct this to you because I think maybe you and Johnny particularly. How will a new chair of House Economic Matters impact pro or con business legislation?
Well, Derek still needs to win an election for treasurer. Provided he does that, Derek and I are friends and colleagues, and when I talked about bipartisanship and working across the aisle, it starts with the chairman of the committee that I serve on. When I started, I'll just simply say to you, when I said to Derek, whatever I can do to help you, I will within the constructs of my political background. So changing committee means that Derek, who I view as being very reasonable, moderate, a listener. Clearly, if we're going to drive a policy through the state of Maryland, he knew how to drive it through our committee and get it on the House floor. But his personality is unique, and I believe in some ways irreplaceable. Whoever fits that void starts by having to match up against who I think is the best chairman in the House of Delegates. That's my personal prerogative in saying that, but I think it's going to be hard. My hope is that our committee moderates, that we perhaps not take this year to be the year we pass the heavy lifting regulatory bills, that our committee get its footing, because there's a lot of change in the House of Delegates. Some of our subcommittee chairs will change. So, if I'm answering the question correctly, I'm hoping that our committee takes a step back and watches the new chairman, whomever that might be, fit into that role and void and do it in a way that best represents all of Maryland, including us on the Eastern Shore, and listens, which Derek did a wonderful job of doing.
Johnny, anything to add?
Yeah, and I'll reiterate Delegate Whip Adams' comments. And it's very hard to understand when you're running a business and some of these new laws take place and some of the things that come out of Annapolis, and you want to know where they came from. Well, who's in charge of that? And so I think, and you have to take a second to look at the process and how legislation is made. And our chairman, who is running for treasurer, Derek Davis, Derek was an incredible arbiter in the committee. He kept a neutral position. He very rarely would show his hand. And oftentimes, because a bill passed, I think many would assume that he was a champion of that bill or a strong supporter of the bill, and that's actually not the case. One of the great things I thought that Chairman Davis did is he gave the minority, that would be the Republicans in our committee, an opportunity to make sure we had the ability to argue, debate, and bring facts to the discussion. So I think it's absolutely critical whoever takes that gavel recognizes the importance and the significance of the information that the minority brings to the debate. I don't think there's any, I would recommend Delegate Adams for chairman of the Economic Matters Committee, but I don't think that's going to go very far. So, but it is a very important, it's a very important position, and we need someone who is balanced.
That changed parties.
Okay, let's,
How about that, Chris?
that's the beauty of audience questions, is that some of these are, wow, I could have had a V8 moments. The O'Malley gas tax increase, the big topic of conversation on the federal level right now is if we pass this huge infrastructure bill and, they're limiting the scope of the bill by just limiting the length of the program. So instead of a $5 trillion bill, it's only one because the child tax credit expires at the end of 1 year instead of going out the full 10 years. As if that ever happens, because how many times have you seen a government program go away, right? So in that vein, this question is, the O'Malley gas tax increase was to fund infrastructure projects. With the federal infrastructure bill covering a lot of this, what can be done with lowering the state gas tax?
I
Addie?
don't think we're going to see a lowering of the state gas tax because during the pandemic, as you all know, people stopped driving, and so the revenue was way down from gasoline, and that all contributes again to the funding that goes into the Transportation Trust Fund. With the increase of electric vehicles and the hybrids, again, that's impacted what's happened as well. So we haven't had the conversations yet, but we were put on notice last year that we would be probably addressing an alternate solution to being able to fund not only roads and bridges through our transportation trust funds, but mass transit. We're the only state in the country that funds both of those out of the same pots of money, and we've never designated other sources, so that will be a conversation. So I say to you that I do not believe there will be a lowering of the gas tax. I think there's going to be a lot of work done on how else do we increase revenues for transportation.
Delegate Hartman?
It's funny you bring that up. I actually co-sponsored a bill coming up this session with Delegate Matt Morgan from Southern Maryland to actually lower the fuel tax. But part of the challenge as our vehicles become more economical, efficient. Thank you. The pot of money keeps dwindling, and then we operate, as Senator Eckert said, the transit system out of it, where we're not getting a return. We're not covering the fare for the public transportation. And then you add in the equation the electric vehicles, and I really think there needs to be balance because you have the electric vehicles on the road and not contributing to that kitty. So our infrastructure is getting more expensive to maintain, and that pot of money is dwindling. So it's bigger than just reducing the gas tax. I think it's creating an equitable policy, whereas electric vehicles and so forth are going to have to start putting some money into that kitty, and we're going to have to realize more from the fare box for public transportation.
Delegate Anderson, anything to add? Efficiently.
You like my answers.
Decent answer, man. Not bad. Yeah, once the electric vehicles start paying into the system, whether it be a vehicle mileage tax or some type of equation, when that happens, then I think that's when realistically you can see a leveling out of the gas tax. because then everybody's paying back into the system the way it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago even. But yeah, it's a good answer. Not bad.
Okay. I heard some panelists mention education as top of mind priority, but I did not hear STEM. Is this a priority for our youth? What initiatives or policy have you advanced in this regard? So science, technology, engineering, and math.
Well, this is one real quick that I wish Senator Carrozza was here for. She's been pushing for that for years in Somerset, Worcester, and Wycomico counties. And so, if she was here, it would be an amazing answer that she would give, and you would have learned a lot from it. Unfortunately, I'm here, so you're not going to get that answer. But I will tell you that it is a priority of ours, but she has definitely spearheaded that. And so we support her in pushing the ball forward. As you've seen, the new school in Somerset County opened up, the expansion at Parkside. There's been work done in Worcester County, and so it's very important. Again, speaking about people who learn like me, if that had been available when I was in high school, would I have taken advantage of it? I don't know, but it's hard to tell how my life trajectory would have changed by that. So, all ideas when it comes to education and making sure everybody can be educated in a fashion that suits them are important.
Is this just a roundabout?
Anybody else?
I mean, within Kerwin, I think there's certainly the goal of giving children the chance to be college and career ready. My wife's a public school teacher, so while I don't have like day-to-day knowledge of what happens, I know Wycomico County does prioritize STEM education opportunities. So, we're near Wallops Island. We're near a lot of opportunities for students to use the skills and use it in a meaningful way. So all I would say is to the county, how can we help? Are we getting funding? Well, of course, all those answers come vis-a-vis the Kerwin bill we passed a few years back, and not to be academic about it, but that's to come, I would think.
Yeah. And
Go ahead, Johnny.
yeah, STEM, Common Core, curriculum, things like that. They were hot topics. There was a lot of involvement, a lot of discussion prior to COVID. Things have changed, and it's pretty interesting. This question's come up, and I think we'll see legislation dealing with this year. But there's a lot of focus on workforce training, and I think most people assume workforce training to be in colleges, community colleges, four-year colleges, things like that. I'm on a task force. It's focused on transforming the workforce for the digital the digital future. I kind of paraphrase what the name of the task force is, but anyway, it's focused, and we've seen this. Originally, it was focused at taking workers and training them to go into another trade, but they've moved their focus to what are we doing in our high schools? How are we getting kids ready from high school to take a job? How do you make them career ready? We've uncovered and I think identified some realities that are troubling, but the reaction or the result of that, I think, will be some legislation focused on those high school seniors, juniors, sophomores, and preparing them to go into the workforce.
Senator Eckert, I want to start with you on this next one because I know you're passionate about healthcare issues, especially mental health, and I think this question kind of leads us down that path. Do you see the screen time, less active, less social lifestyle as a problem? What are your plans on addressing this with the young generation? What can be done from a legislative perspective on that?
Would you say the first part
Sure.
of that?
Do you see the screen time, phones, cell phones, tablets, less active, less social interaction in person, lifestyle, as a problem? Knowing that we can't put the genie back in the bottle as far as technology goes, what can be done from a legislative perspective to deal with the issues that arise because of that, teen depression?
Well, if you're talking about teen depression, I guess from all of the information I've heard and all the schools and teachers I've heard, kids are glad to be back in school. I think they had an overdose of screen time while they were out of school. And that's what I've heard from most of the students I've interacted with, that they were glad to be back in school and able to be with their friends. With regard to too much screen time, there are a lot of apps and other mechanisms available to control kids' time on their phones or on their devices or whatever. I know my son and daughter-in-law know exactly where our grandchildren are at every time. They even know how fast they're driving down the highways. They keep that close of a watch on them. And maybe that's not available for everybody because there may not be parents who watch their kids that closely. But depression and I think I'm not going to relate it as much to screen time. I think that there are other issues, just the trauma of the pandemic, and I think the lack of social interaction are probably more of an impact on that.
As an insurance agent, let me tell you, it warms my heart to hear you keeping track of grandchildren driving. Anybody else?
Yeah, you go speak.
That's right.
Delegate Hartman.
I think a lot of the apps and so forth, that comes at a federal level. But I mean, we really can't, and Senator Eckert touched on it, we can't legislate parenting. I think that's where a lot of the problem stems from home. You kind of segue that into childhood depression and stuff. I mean, the kids, if you don't take them away from social media, before when we were kids, you leave school 3 o'clock and all the problems of school stayed home. And now, the harassment, bullying, and everything stays with them throughout the day. So I really think parenting those devices, those tools that can be used to limit the amount of time that our kids are on social media and so forth, I think is what, we need to have that awakening. It's the parents' responsibility at some point.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Can I jump back in on that? Because I think there's a bigger issue, and it was something I meant to touch on early on. The reason I think it's so important that we do prenatal care and infants and toddlers and early kindergarten is because nobody ever talks about promoting mental health. And I'm a psych nurse. If you want to do good prevention of depression and mental illness, you put your resources in birth to 5 or birth to 8. And what's missing many times is we have children coming to school who are not socialized. So how do we address that issue? We've got some innovative programs going on throughout the shore where folks are recognizing that. And so the plan is to be able to support the parents while they're raising those young children. So it would be fathering classes, it would be parenting classes, it would be being able to wrap services around that young family, even if it's a single parent family, to be able to do that, to be able to promote mental health. That's how you prevent depression, and preventing further complications. Well, addiction fits in that as well. And when are we going to start working with the family as the unit to begin to interrupt some of the very dilemmas that plague us? Addiction, severe mental illness, anxiety. That's how we, I think, make the big difference.
I'm going to go ahead and shift us back
Getting
onto
on the soapbox.
the roadmap here. Thank you all for addressing the questions from the audience, because I think that's really the most important thing we do. Your fellow legislators are now proposing an additional 12 weeks of paid family leave. It's going to be funded by a withdrawal from paychecks of the individual employees and the employer. So a percentage of employee funded, a percentage employer funded, similar to Social Security. The impact on the owners of the small businesses will compound on top of a wide variety of previously passed state mandates on businesses. I won't elaborate on that one or we'd be here forever. Employees will likely see this new deduction from their salary as a pay cut. When employees use this new leave, how is a small business owner supposed to temporarily fill the vacancy of this employee who's leaving for 12 weeks? Are you in favor of this legislation? If so, why? And if not, what can we do to change the direction of this bill? Sorry, Johnny, go ahead.
I've got a cheeky answer. The solution when the employee's out, the way the business owner fills that is the business owner takes that employee's position and makes sure whatever needs to be done is done to keep the business running.
Okay, you're fired.
Yeah, I would oppose that, just real quickly. I just wanted to lighten things up a little bit.
Chris?
The problem with the bill is it implies that business owners don't know how to conduct business with their employees. In fact, any regulation like this implies the very worst of every business owner out there. So for example, I'm a business owner that's fortunate. I have resources, I've got the bank, I've got the line of credit, cash, working capital. So if I had an employee that needed to take 4 or 6 weeks off, could I pay for that? Well, of course I could. And maybe I do it because it's in the best interest of my business, but probably because I'm just a good employer. And most employers carry the same thought that I do, that we like to comply with law, we like to be, but at the end of the day, we are in the business of working with people. That's our employees, that's our most important asset. So the bill implies that we don't know how to conduct business with our employees. That's wrong. And we've said that a number of times in the House of Delegates and in our committee. Now, just more on a practical level, the financial impact on employees is real. They might talk about it being incrementally, just a little bit more money here, a little bit more money there. Trust me when I tell you, the government takes enough, and they continue to take enough. And if the federal government continues on their path, inflation continues doing what it does, at what point in time is enough too much? And we are at that point. The wrong time for the bill, the short answer is we fight and kill this bill. There may be a year where this bill passes, but in basic, it's an insurance program being run by the federal government. There's only one example like this, and the best example is unemployment insurance. And we watched our state, how it used and then it got abused, that system to terrible detriment to the employers. I'm just going to tell you, we can't repeat that program, not only because we don't like the idea of the bill, but because what's possible in years forward when it does pass, and all of a sudden employees are starting to abuse it. We start expanding the use of it over what's currently thought, and it's untenable. So we've got to stop this bill this year.
Wayne?
Yes, if I can add, for the record, I don't support it. As far as filling that vacancy for 12 weeks, you probably have to hire about 3 people because by the time they start and they quit 2 weeks later, it's going to take at least 4 or 5 employees to get through that. That's just my humor with a bad voice. The proponents of that are really working hard for this. I just want to let you know. I actually emailed Bill and the other chambers when I saw this coming, when I started receiving emails about this legislation. And I just saw an email this morning that Monday, December the 6th, 9 to 11 at Lawyers Mall, there's going to be a coffee social for Time to Care, advocating for this very thing. So maybe December 6, 9 to 11, those that don't support it should maybe be at Lawyers Mall and presenting the other side of it. So it's one of those things, like I said, with the tax on labor, we need, as a business community across the state, we need to mobilize and defeat this.
Anyone else? Senator Ager?
I agree. Many times in Annapolis, we wind up fighting the battles for folks who never come to Annapolis. And it's really difficult year after year to continue to stand up and fight and try to defeat things when we don't always feel that support or as much support with us as there is on the other side. Presence is important. Letters, calls, building coalitions to be able to stand up and say no is so very important. And I can't stress that enough, and maybe you're exactly right. We need to have enough people there saying, no, this is not a good idea, as there will be trying to promote it. But on the other side, we really need to come up with alternatives. You know, what is the reason for offering this opportunity? And how can employers then address that and convince the other side that we have a better way?
Yeah, I think everybody's on point with this, especially coming out of a pandemic. You know, I think it's just like the absolute worst time to continue mandating on small employers, if there ever is a good time, but this is definitely not it. You know, but everything everybody has said here is correct. And I want to thank those of you, I see you out here, who call me during session or text or Facebook message or email. I really appreciate it, but it'd be nice if y'all came up and hang out with us a little bit. So, see you this winter.
Okay. Recently, Wycomico County accepted a comprehensive water and sewer plan. While the plan outlines where work needs to be done and creates a roadmap on how to get there, it currently only has buy-in from the county. Keeping in mind that we've made a comprehensive water and sewer plan 4 times since the 60s, and I don't think anything's been done on it yet. What role can you as state legislators play in being mediators between the county and the local municipalities who own the existing sewer systems? How do we communicate the value of annexation to the county and its residents? And most importantly, how do we ensure that the county gets the funding and discharge permits from the state that it needs in order to make this plan work?
I can take that.
Addie, go ahead.
This is one of my pet peeves, pet projects. I think one of the most important things we can do is refurbish and build up our non-existing wastewater treatment. There are funds available, there is a system available, and there are additional federal funds that can be used for this. So now is the time to do it. You all sat here this morning and heard about the state of our economic affairs on the shore. We are not going to be able to retain that if we're not able to provide those basic infrastructure needs through water and sewer to folks who pay the lion's share of the taxes. And people will not live here. It's important that folks live here and that we have access to water and sewer just like we need access to broadband. One of the ways, and now is the time to do it because there are some funds available. And we will work our hardest in Annapolis to make sure those projects get funding and make sure we get the kind of federal share that we need depending on where the location is. I am not a mediator for the county and the municipalities, but we do have experienced people who can do that. I think the bigger issue is to realize that this is a significant leadership issue, whether it's the municipalities or the county who takes the lead on that, and there are resources available. One of the things that I've had to do in some of our other counties is just show up regularly at the county council meeting to be able to make sure that I'm just keeping people talking and keeping the issue in front of everybody's minds. It takes, in my estimation, way too long to get water and sewer, particularly sewer access to many of our communities where folks are paying the lion's share of the tax burden.
And I'll just segue and add on. You know, the current events in Wycomico County is we desperately need to have a better comprehensive plan where the city of Salisbury and also other municipalities, but certainly Salisbury and Wycomico County work together to get this resolved. Greater Salisbury Committee and Salisbury Chamber of Commerce obviously has this as a priority for an obvious reason. So we talk about mediation. Aren't those the entities that do a very good job of that? Look, we have cesspools in Wycomico County. We have failing septic systems. So just on the environmental end of this, we've got to act. I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying as a county that we have to work all hands on deck to get this issue forward. My guess is, before this is all said and done, that Wacomico County, for example, might have a public works director and a more of a spokesperson role in this involvement. I also think that the annexation conversation gets difficult, and hopefully we don't lose the forest for the trees, which is that annexation might be palatable for the city of Salisbury, for example, but rather what we really want is service to all areas that need it. And I know we have urban service districts. I'm a state delegate, so my role isn't to say how we get this done. What I will say is that I'm aware of citizens that simply don't have operating septic systems, and I see examples like in Talbot County where this is getting resolved. Dorchester County, as Addie talked about, it's done through cooperation, through planning, and through efforts that really get to the meat of the matter, which is to protect our environment.
Yeah, real quick, as a former mayor, I kind of see the crux of this situation, and there is no situation yet. I mean, this is all still preliminary. There hasn't really been any formal discussions that I'm aware of between the municipalities and the county regarding the expansion of municipal wastewater, but those need to happen. We have the ability here to really tear down some walls that have been up for a long time. Even during my time as mayor, I saw the crux between the county and the municipalities, and I think we can erode that away with this. And the issue is annexations. There are many other issues. There's tax differential is another issue, and all these things play right into each other. And I think there's an opportunity to collaborate. I do a lot of what would you do in my head, when I'm driving back and forth to Annapolis, when you hear something on the radio, okay, what would you do with that situation? What would you do with this situation? Well, with this one, what I would do is you'd bring the municipalities together and offer, okay, look, if you want to annex properties in, we'll do it after the property's sold. If a person's living there, as long as they're living there, not an issue. But when they sell, then they're annexed in the municipality, because all municipal residents are county residents. So until there's tax differential, it's not going to affect the county's tax base. But what it will do is alleviate the burden on county services, because then those services shift to the municipalities, police, public works, and things of that nature. So, there is a way to do it. You have to educate the folks that are in these close areas. I'm thinking down Mount Hermit Road. I'm thinking down Colburn Mill Road. I'm thinking Nutter's Crossing. I'm thinking areas like that. You're going to have to explain how it works to be in a municipal boundary at that point. And it may take some time. It may take a lot of conversation. It may take a lot of phasing in of taxes and phasing in of services, but it can be done if the municipalities and the county are amenable to sit down and find a common agreement. But the goal is to make sure that everybody's home works the way it's supposed to work as these new septic regulations come in. And we're talking 20 years from now, 30 years from now, that we're not dealing with this any longer, and everybody is able to have, which is the whole point of everything, is to enjoy the quality of life you want. And we just got to find a way to get there. And I believe in the folks that are in leaderships. I see a council member sitting right out there. How you, brother? I believe in you, man. And I believe that coming together, we'll find a way to make it happen.
Okay, I'm going to start with Delegate Motz, and we'll come back this way, and just any direction you want to go, your expectations for this coming session, your synopsis of where we are and where you want to be. 90 seconds, go.
Wow. That's free reign. I don't, you don't get a long leash like that. Well, every year I go to Annapolis optimistic. And then, as similar to the question earlier, what can you do differently when you go vote no and these things continue to happen? We've been through an enormous experience. And I think the way the world has changed so rapidly is we're going to Annapolis in January with facts and figures. We've got empirical data. We can show, we can not only make the argument, but the data is there to back us up. And so I'm hopeful that information and the new dynamic is going to help us influence policy in Annapolis more so than it has in the past. This is an election year, and they say that election years are years when it's not good to have controversial bills. But I don't know how you don't have controversial bills considering all the things that are going on in the world right now. And that actually slows the process down. So where we are right now is we're at a crossroads, and my expectation is we come out of Annapolis with a plan, with a blueprint for where we're going to be going in the future, and that blueprint and plan has roads to success that everybody can achieve.
Well, Monday, we'll be back in Annapolis, starting with the redistricting, can't even talk, start my 90 seconds over, will you, please? Redistricting for the congressional seats. During regular session, we'll be working on our seats for Senate and House. Personally, I probably have more legislation this session than in the past. Agritourism bill for Worcester County, adding weddings to the definition of agritourism, which would be a statewide bill. A piece of legislation I'm working on I think would be beneficial to everybody, a portability transfer for your homestead tax credit. So a lot of people, have a homestead tax credit and they want to move, but they would lose that, especially for our seniors if they want to downsize. So whatever percentage of discount you're enjoying right now in your tax bill because of the homestead tax credit, I want to make that transferable to another residence in Maryland. It'll help keep our seniors and retirees here. Always working to protect our Second Amendment. And then voter integrity. As we all know, this last election, I'm not saying that the election was skewed or not, but if we need to have confidence in our elections. And I lost my mom in February, and I got a notice that Social Security is notified of their death through the funeral home. And I thought, well, why aren't the funeral homes and crematoriums notifying the Board of Election when somebody dies? So I'm going to put in a bill to require just that. So I hate putting a burden on our small business, but we need confidence in our elections, and I think that's a good way to get there, help clean up the voter rolls.
My impression of Delegate Hartman in committee.
Have I got a deal for you?
Carl.
I hope this goes away. I think it was spreading a little too much holiday cheer at the Berlin parade last night. Too many Merry Christmases. In fact, Delegate Otto texted me and said he woke up with the same sore throat exactly. So that's my delegate. Yeah. Okay. I'll put my mask back on.
Delegate Anderton.
It's not COVID. I had my test. Okay.
Mask up, homeboy. Mask
There
up.
you go.
Mask on. So we're going back Monday for a special session, then we go back in January for a regular session. And, I look around, I see the airport, I'm thinking of our water port, UMES, Warwick, we're here at SU, Tidal Health was here. Those are some of the foundation blocks of what makes everybody else in this room successful with those unique jewels that we have that we should be taking advantage of and doing better jobs at promoting. And so, we're going to look to find ways to do that, not only in Annapolis, but here at home and all across the state, working on the wastewater plan with the county. We have several items in the budget that we're working on. We have a new council in Delmarva that they need help setting their plan together, and so a lot of our focus will be on building blocks, setting the foundation. So as we move forward, which we will, coming out of the pandemic and the reset and all that stuff, that will be better than when we went in. And so I'm excited about being there. I'm excited about working for you. I'm very blessed, very grateful. I wake up every day appreciative of it. And so if you ever need anything, you know where to find me. I'll do whatever I can to help, even come pick you up if you're broke down. So just excited, ready to go.
Unless you live in my district, call me, okay?
Okay.
And he doesn't represent Worcester. Otto and I carry the.
I represent everybody.
Delegate Adams.
So first off, thank you for the opportunity to serve you as a business owner of this community and with the Salisbury Chamber of Commerce. It is a privilege to do that. Last April, I was elected minority whip along with our minority leader, Jason Buckle from Western Maryland. I'll give you the cliff notes on this. We worked together to appeal to our caucus, not necessarily on Republican versus Democrat grounds, but rather urban versus rural grounds. He represents Western Maryland. I represent certainly the Eastern Shore. And so our caucus, I believe, will start to galvanize around that theme. It's very important in Maryland. I think the realistic viewpoint is we're 42 members of 141 in the House of Delegates, so anything they want to do, they can do with or without us. But we can win issues on their merits when we talk about why things are different here on the Eastern Shore, why things are different in Western Maryland. When we think about police reform and when we think about education, voter integrity, these are issues that resonate with the voters. I will tell you that we've polled through our caucus where the temperament is with the election coming up. We are very ambitious and looking forward to the next election cycle of bringing a great slate of candidates through. I'm looking forward to running for re-election in this district and bringing with us more voices and members into the House of Delegates. My last comment, because I think that it's worth saying, is that we have a very important race for governor. Obviously, a number of candidates on the Democrat side and on the Republican side. Very important that voters understand that for the past 8 years, we've had what I'll call as divided government in Maryland, which is so very important. We are heard when we have the ability to have dialogue and conversation, and so we need to make sure when we come through this, and we're sitting here next year, hopefully, in this room, that we have that kind of voice that stays in place for our citizens on the Eastern Shore. One-party rule just simply doesn't cut it, and our caucus will work very hard to make sure that we're on the right side of these elections in November.
Thank you very much, and happy holidays to everybody. It's always a treat to be here, not only to hear about the state of the economic picture on the shore, but to be able to share with you what we're going to be doing in Annapolis. I will be focusing on infrastructure, and as you've heard me say before, that's broadband access to everybody, and that has a lot of variations on the theme. Wastewater treatment, as I said, I still believe we get a better nutrient reduction if we can upgrade and maintain our systems that aren't being maintained right now. And then again, our workforce, particularly our health workforce. I've been working with the Board of Nursing to be able to do an opportunity for our advanced practice nurses to work across state lines. All RNs are able to do that with compact, but advanced practice is not. So we're going to be doing that. That expands access to health care, doing something with CNA training and modifying that as well. And then also working with Suicide Fatality Review Board. We do a lot of looking at overdose deaths, but we don't dig down and drill down into what are actually suicides and what may make a difference moving forward in suicide prevention. And then as we integrate, as I said before, how do we promote mental health and prevent mental illness and addiction through our school systems with the appropriate personnel, and adding the addition of trauma-informed care and mental health first aid, which are already in our school systems, actually, as a part of their teacher development. How we support our teachers going forward because of the increase of violence and the increase in risk-taking of our kids, again, is critical. And there's one more piece. When we did police reform, we really didn't address the whole issue of when there's a mental health crisis and police are called, who transports? Do we put somebody in a police car with all of the activities that go with that? Are we able to transport folks in an ambulance to an appropriate place for assessment and then de-escalation? All of these are going to be issues that are going to be critical, in addition to how we deal with surplus when everybody wants a little bit more, and yet plan for stabilization over the next couple of years, because we know we're going to take a dip as inflation goes up and we still are not stabilized within the business community. That's going to be a critical piece of the discussion that we all have. But once again, thank you, Greg, for moderating. Thank you all for supporting us, and do listen to us. If we have the opportunity, please come to Annapolis. We will welcome your support there.
Members of the business community in Wicomico County and the surrounding area, I hope you have come away from this with at least the idea that they're from the government and they're here to help. Bill Chambers, President and CEO.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks to our legislators. So, Joe Tabling, will you please stand up, Joe? Joe is with CQI. They are the Chamber's energy co-op. They're the Chamber's free energy co-op. And if you're not a member of our co-op, which costs you nothing, you're leaving money on the table. The average savings by joining the co-op is equivalent to your highest 1-month electric or utility bill. So talk to Joe, get involved. He'll look at your past 3 or 4 months of electric bills, and he'll tell you what you could save by joining the co-op. Nearly every Chamber of Commerce in the state is a part of the CQI Energy Co-op, so I encourage you to see Joe. Big thanks to my team, Cindy, Sigrid, and Debbie, who's not with us, for their hard work. And again, big thanks to the Beacon team, led by John Hickman. Thanks to Jess, Deja, and Kit. They were here before the sun rose this morning, getting things going for us. Real quickly, I want to ask Mike Dunn. He's got a mic back there. There's something really important coming up related to offshore wind.
Buddy. Thank you, Bill. Great program today. So the Business Network for Offshore Wind on March the 16th, 17th, and 18th, coming to the Lower Shore. They're coming to Salisbury. One of the things that they're doing is called Foundation to Blade. And so as we prepare for offshore wind coming, Greater Salisbury Committee has been involved in this because of the job opportunities and the possibilities. And we hear about the supply chain and what will those jobs be. But at the end of the day, a lot of us don't know what those jobs will be, so that's why they're coming here. Again, it'll be March 16th, 17th, and 18th. Joining them separately will be Ørsted. We'll take a little bit of time to talk about what they're planning to do. And then U.S. Wind will take some time to talk about what they're planning to do. And they're slightly different, and so they're slightly different business models. So if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, and you want to figure out how you might be able to invest in and be part of this supply chain, this job chain, March 16th, 17th, and 18th, that opportunity will come, and there will be much more about it. So, Bill, thanks for the opportunity to share.
Thank you, Mike. How about a round of applause for our legislators? Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And good luck swaying the other side when it comes to your special session on Monday. The Princeton Review gave the proposal by the House and Senate leadership an F for redistricting. It's a mess, one of the worst redistricting jobs in the country, yet the House Speaker says it's the most inclusive redistricting that she's ever seen. I don't know what planet that scene has come from, but this is what you all need to do to get involved. As they all said, the business community needs to get involved. We'll be able to go to Annapolis in person this year. We weren't last year, and I talked to Delegate Adams about this. It was to the detriment of the business community that we didn't have the same open access to all the legislators, because as Delegate Anderson said, where the work really needs to be done to sway opinions is in the committees. So you'll be hearing from the chamber. We have a legislative subcommittee that meets every other week during session to go over bills. We coordinate with the state chamber very closely. I chair the Association of Chamber Executives for the state and the State Chamber Federation, and together we'll be working with our partners to try and beat back some of these onerous pieces of legislation. You all can get involved, just let me know. Thank you all. We'll see you all next year. Have a great holiday season.